Welcome to the Story in Your Head podcast. Today, our guest is Elon Hasson. Is that how you pronounce it? Elon Hasson.
Yep.
So welcome to the podcast.
Thanks.
If I could you give me like a brief introduction of who you are and
Sure.
like what you do?
Yeah. So I'm a renewable energy developer based in Portland, Oregon. My company develops large scale, utility scale renewable energy projects, mostly wind and solar. We've been around since 2018. And prior to that, I worked at some of the larger developers in the world doing wind development on the West Coast and the Midwest and in the South. And prior to that, I worked on political campaigns and in government relations and practiced law. So came with sort of an eclectic background, and it's kind of an eclectic chat.
Great.
Wow, thank you. Hey, today we want to talk a little bit about business culture.
Mm-hmm.
That sound okay?
Yeah.
Just to kick it off, what does that mean to you? What does business culture mean to you?
Yeah. So I think first, I start at the mission level. Like we're very mission driven. I got into renewable energy because I wanted to work on climate change and got tired of doing it at the policy level. And I also believe that on the market side was a lot better avenue to pursue those results. So, but I bring with me the political and sort of organizing background where you're really mission driven. And so, we're doing things. It's not just a job. It's things we believe in, things we want to do. So I think I'd start the culture there. I really make sure that the team knows why we're doing this and why it's important and how it fits in. So if we're building a wind farm, for example, you have to understand how it's affecting the energy grid, what the contribution is, because it's a very large issue to sort of wake up in the morning and feel like you can make any progress on. But if you start breaking it down to small bites, it starts to get more interesting. So I'd say that's the first thing when I think of culture is the mission of the why people are doing things. And then I find that builds a really good foundation for the internal communications. I guess is the next thing I think of as culture is how we communicate with one another, and the values within that. And so within the context of what we're trying to save the planet, do that through the energy transition, and what we're really good at is developing projects. So in that, how do we help each other? How do we, since we're all moving towards this one goal, if someone's fallen behind, how do we pick them up? It's not like, hey, you did this wrong. It's like, hey, we got a big goal here, and we kind of need you moving. So how do we get you moving? What do you need? So I don't know. That's how I think of culture.
Oh, thanks, Elon. Now I know you've got a kind of a remote team. You're kind of spread out around the world. Can you kind of describe what it's like to lead a group or business that's so remote?
So first and foremost, it was all COVID. But for COVID, I don't know what we would have done. I certainly wouldn't have built a team that was globally based, but we were stuck in our basements and I needed some help. And so I went on a gig work site and found Jamie. And so we started working remotely, and I was pretty intentional about not making everything as transactional as most of our, meetings are. So I would schedule unstructured meetings where we wouldn't have an agenda. We wouldn't be meeting for a very, very direct purpose, but we would have it a little more broad field. And it was largely so I could teach a lot of what goes on in development and try and recreate some of the osmosis you get in the office space. And then we kind of took that to another level and did even a more unstructured meeting as a team on Fridays. We do a checkout meeting, which is where I deliberately try and talk about any of the things we did during the week. Like it's never about like how this lease got signed or didn't get signed, but it's much more like how we interact as humans together and how we're communicating and what our experience is as people working together. And we found that to be really effective in a world where we didn't travel. So keeping a small team and having and just building that time in where we're simulating talking as we would in an office space around a water cooler. And then I would say that we did that it was 3 years where I never met one of my people on my team who lived in Bali. And then I hadn't met Jamie, who lives in Argentina. I had met her for 2 years. And just this May, for the first time, we all got together in New Orleans at a conference, and it was magical just to see, like, everyone was kind of fast friends. It was like we all knew each other, and we were just seeing each other in 3 dimensions. So lots of a lot of intentionality, a lot of thought going into, like, how are we going to communicate and talk with each other, because like, just doing it over email is not going to work. It's a little too sterile.
Yeah, that's what I heard from you is purpose. That you created that purpose. I think a lot of people might have been caught off guard during COVID that, oh my gosh, we do have all these water cooler conversations, and all of a sudden, what do we do to replace that? And I know some companies didn't replace that, right? They lost a piece of that.
Mm-hmm.
So you've been continuing to foster that?
Yeah, I think it's just, I have been continuing to foster that because it's just kind of the environment I want to work in. I will definitely say, like, if we had this conversation in March of 2020, I'd say, yeah, it can't be done. You can't create that culture. I don't know how this is going to work. So we learned that we can, we're adaptable, and there are ways of doing these things. And my hope is this broad, abstract term of intention sort of can carry us, just keeping that goal in front of us. Like, well, let's strive to be a team. And that means something more than, can you get me this top paper I asked you for 2 days ago? And yeah, I think I endeavor to meet with everybody once a week on a one-on-one meeting. That's a little bit more project focused and like catching people up and trying to teach them, because when I learned development, I was in a shop of 18 people, and I had 2 brilliant people who were 2 levels above me. I had 3 people that were really above me, but were my peers. I had 4 people below me and that was at my learning environment, because it's a very, I really call it a practice, kind of like medicine or law, where you're just constantly learning it. It's not like, oh, I do this now. Every day I learn something new. But in today's world, you don't have that, especially when it's remote. Like, I would learn things because I'd be eavesdropping on my neighbor's conversation, doing an interconnection request with BPA, and the system impact study was going to come in at $30,000 more than it was before, and we'd be like, what happened there? And so recognize we need to recreate that in a way and it's hard to reach. It's hard to do that, but I found the intentional and structured meetings to be very helpful, where we have loose agendas, but really we're hoping those conversations meander a decent amount.
So I'm just speculating that you may have perfect people. They don't make any mistakes. Right?
Yes,
that could happen. That could happen somewhere in the world. But how do you deal with those breakdowns, those mistakes, those errors that people make?
I think it's when things go wrong, how do you work on it? I mean, we try and not to do things where people go away for like 10 days and then come back with a product. So it's not like, where did this come from? In fact, I'd say one of the things we strategize to make sure that doesn't happen is regular check-ins. And I honestly, it's not that the team doesn't make mistakes. It's just that one person on our team in particular, Jamie, is just very good at making sure things don't go that long before mistakes are found. We kind of had a good opportunity. One of the first things we did as a team was we closed on a project, and we had to go through all of our materials, and QA/QC we actually found a problem in something because the QA/QC wasn't good. And that was one of the first lessons learned we did, was just like having QA/QC as being a kind of an important function of what one does. And particularly with maps, because there's usually a subject matter expert who's really good at all the KMZs and shape files, and it's kind of a black box. And so you don't get to see a product until it goes out, and that can be a problem. And so we kind of backtrack that. And I think I'm pretty aware of a lot of the mistakes I'm prone to. Like, I have lots of typos. My writing isn't very strong, and I kind of know where I'm going to make mistakes. And so we've developed enough systems that we're catching a lot of those ahead of time. So yeah, I think a lot of it is we're a little slower and a little more deliberate. And we cut out, we don't go a long time without talking. So I'd say that's one way we address it. You might have been thinking something more specifically though.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, it's interesting because oftentimes people will tend to use email if they're in disparate geographies and things like that. But you've really gone to making those conversations, and I'm curious about how scalable that is. Like, what do you think about that?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know. I'm leery of scale. So one of the things I did, I ran the campaign here, coordinated campaign in 2004 for the presidential, and actually July 19th. On June 16th, we had 4 people working for us. On November 2nd, we had 1,500 people. So we built that all up in 4 months. So, and I hated that. I was definitely the first, the first people hired. I built the team. I built my core team, just top-notch managers, and we were awesome. And then my boss was just like, "You need to like triple in size." I was like, "No, it's going to destroy everything." He's like, "Don't care." And so I saw how to scale, and I just, I like having my core and like doing it really good. And you have to do that so that you can scale, but like inevitably it deteriorates, right? I mean, you just can't have the same product at 1,500 people that I have with 6. So in this business, it's obviously a lot more dramatic there. So it's a question of how much culture you want to give up to how much you want to grow. Right now, our culture is really, really strong. We're having conversations about bringing more people on. And, there's a lot of like, hey, this is pretty good. This is pretty fun. Like we like each other. We get along really well. We're productive. And, if we grow, that's going to change. So, I mean, can we add a couple more people? Yeah. Can we be 20 people? It's not my vision. I think we could certainly, I think I could make a company that didn't have what we have 20 better, but it's pretty good here. So it would deteriorate a little bit. I definitely think I think you'd have to keep it in small groups. So if I were to double in size, say if we were 12 people or 15 people, I think you'd almost need to have like 2 groups that are sort of interchanging all the time. So you can have that sort of interaction with folks. Because there are people who like to talk in meetings like this, or people who don't like to talk, and everyone needs to kind of be exposed to each other. So having people have enough opportunity to participate is key. So yeah, it's pretty hard. It's not something I'm great at. So like my buddy came in and helped us scale up for that 2004 campaign. He's good at the scaling part. I'm good at the core part. So yeah, I don't know how much it scales. I think I can grow another 20% with a decent amount of work and keep it what it is. I think 40%, I'm going to have to give up something. And if I grew 50%, I think it would be a different culture. Not radically different, not binary, but like it would be different.
Yeah, I'm curious. You mentioned a couple times that what would you have to give up in your culture? Yeah. What are those things?
Well, right now it's my vision. It's my baby. It's my company. I started it. It's named after my daughter. Like it's in fact, I spent the first 2 years transitioning from the Elon show to the Emerald show. And I think now with the team there, it's Emerald has a philosophy. But one of the key things in culture is inclusion and buy-in. So by definition, the people around me they're like me, but they're also a little different. And so if we wanted to grow, their culture would start to need to come in, and that would be different from my culture. And I think there'd be less me to go around, and there'd be more of us to go around, but it would change a little bit. So I think, so I think that's one way it would change. And deliberately using words like different, not better or worse. Like it might be better. But I think our team acknowledged what we have now is really good. So there's a question of like, I don't think it would be like, I think if I doubled in size, I don't think it would be twice as good. I think if we increase 50% in size, it could be twice as good. But, you have to define what does good mean? Like, what does that really look like?
Are there threats, or what are the threats that you see for your culture? Like for
Oh,
developing
culture.
it, keeping it now, or growing it? What are those threats? How does it show up?
Um, Growth, I think, is a threat, right? It's an opportunity, and it's a strength, it's an opportunity and a threat. I think it's natural to want to grow. For me, it is like I want to just do more. I mean, it's part of our mission is to work on climate change. I want to do more. To do more, I need more people, and we all want to do more. So there's constantly a push to do more, and I think, and part of me is a little worried in terms of a threat that if I don't do more, I might actually be losing ground. I can't tell you why, but it's just sort of an instinct. Like if we were to stay at this group and just do this much work all the time and we didn't grow, just laws of physics say that's not things don't stay in stasis; they go up and down, right? So, so I think that's a threat to the culture. And once you bring in that new element, again, that can really change things. I mean, the main question I'm facing is just like, well, so I want to grow. And so a good friend asked me, like, the question is not, do you want to grow or not? It's how. Do you want to get bigger? Do you want to increase your margins? Do you want to do more projects? Do you want to make more money? Like, what is it? How do you want to grow? And that's, again, that can change the culture. Just like, well, if we want just more people, like I come from an organizing background where I would just, I mean, if it were up to me and if I had all the resources in the world, I would hire everybody and just train them and spend the time and just grow people, grow people's skills. But not everyone likes doing that. You know, a lot of people are like, yeah, it takes me longer to train somebody and I like doing this work. And why would I want to teach someone else that? That's a cultural difference. For me, I look at my job as trying to replace myself. Like as soon as I can teach somebody to do my job, I go do something else. Some people are like, no, I like doing my job. I don't want someone else to come in and do this. I really like doing this. So if I had more people, I might have more people who want to do that, and then we don't grow as much, and then that's changed. Inclusion, growth is, I'd say growth in terms of culture. What changes the culture is, more people in changes the culture.
When you were interviewing for the people you hired now, like what were you looking for in their culture?
I mean, the first thing I look for is a passion for climate change, to make a difference. Like I want people to want to wake up in the morning and almost in every single person. In fact, this was really fun. We, at the end of our first year together, we had our yearly checkout and everyone turned out, everyone had written down a vision for what they wanted to do, the job they wanted to have. They were all unhappy in the work they were doing, and they were doing all of that in this job. And myself included, I started out with a vision, I want to work on the market side of renewable energy. I had no idea what that was. Remarkably unqualified for doing any of the work. But it was just that vision of it. And everyone had everyone had their own little thing. Anthony, who you knew, he was just he was working in sports and wanted to have more meaning in his life and wanted to have a job because he was doing contracting the whole time. And there was wanted to live in Portland, wanted to work with people who wanted to teach him. And it was just all these things were this job. So my interview questions are a lot of, what do you want? What kind of person are you? We always start hiring someone by giving them a task that is within the business, but really leans on their individual skill set. So I want to see how they work with something that they're pretty good at and something how they work with that's a little bit new to them. Because at the end of the day, this is about learning. You've got to be an avid learner and you have to be kind of fearless in what you don't know. So those are the kind of questions I ask of why do you want to do this? What kind of things can you do? And then it's usually me being creative enough to come up with a task that shows them that they have confidence that they can do this, if they in fact can, and also gives me some insight into their methods of working.
You mentioned about having a vision, or they had a vision. Is that a requirement to be a part of it? You request they write a vision for that, or they just had a vision and you were looking for somebody who had the vision?
I was looking for someone who had a vision, but I do tell people, I interviewed this guy the other day or the other week. I was my spiel is this is a climate company. We're focused on the energy transition. We're changing, we're doing the energy transition. We are focused on development because that's what we're good at. And that's where we drive success. And that's what we are. And the guy said, yeah, man, if I can make a lot of money doing it, that'd be awesome. I'm like, cool, I'll work with him, but I'll never hire. I can't, that's not my jam. And we pay people well. I want everyone to make money, but like the motivate, like you got to come in here. I think it's too hard to be motivated by money. Actually, it's not true. I don't know how to teach someone who's not motivated by climate change. Because for me, it's just like, that's where I always come down to when it's hard. It's just like, hey, I know it's hard. This has never been done before. Yeah, you're right. This doesn't make sense. Yeah, it's really hard calling landowners. But guess what? That's why it hasn't been done yet. That's why we're in this situation. So you got to go solve a problem, man.
We'll get to landowners in a second. But it's almost like the ante to get into your business, to work with you.
Yes.
Is you got to have that passion first around climate change.
Yep.
Got it.
Yeah. My thought is like, I can't teach everybody, but I will try and teach you if you care. And if you care, I think I can teach you. Not everybody. I mean, we've definitely cycled out of people early on. It was like, yeah, you guys, you just don't have it, man. Like they might really be, it's one thing like being like, yeah, I'd like to work in climate change. It's another thing being like, yeah, no, I'm going to figure this out. Like I'm going to nose the grindstone, and you give me a system impact study, I will read it. I'll fall asleep. I'll wake up again. I'll read it again, and I'll just keep going until I understand it sufficiently that I can make a difference.
Got it. Well, now this is like the culture of your group, right?
Yeah.
That we're talking about as 5, 6, whatever many people there are, right? And then you have projects that you're developing all over the country that have all different cultures everywhere you go. So if you could, like, how do you dance with all those cultures? Like you're creating your own culture, but you're also dancing with others' cultures.
Yeah. I mean, I love it. Like I have really good friendships with people all across the country, and definitely in demographics that I would never, ever be friends with. It's relationship building. It's not something you go in and say, hey, I'm a wind developer. Will you sign up? And they say, yes. And that's it. It's like you get to know each other over time. And I do a lot of empathic listening. I work very hard on not judging people.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Empathic listening. Tell me about that one.
Yeah. Empathic listening. It's listening not to respond, to really understand where the other person is coming from. And so like you want to put yourselves completely in their world so that you can communicate to them that you really understand what they're doing. So I mean, you start off with empathic listening, just repeating like you don't like Joe Biden. That's right. Yeah, I don't like Joe Biden. But if you just say it like that, it's just like, they're like, okay, cool, you're repeating what I say. But when you really kind of like, you're listening to people like, why don't they like him? And not with the idea of, but this, it's like, no. When I'm talking to them, I'm completely in their world, and I completely get why they're talking about it. And I completely agree with them too, because you're really present with them. And that gives me a lot of insight, because, it turns out no one's stupid. Like people come to the world with a different lens, and they have different sets of things that they've learned in life. And that's great. And it's important for me to learn that. And then what it does is it creates this space where they start to be like, oh, wow, this guy is actually listening to me. What I get more often than not is, Elon, I hear all this stuff about Portland. I thought everyone there was crazy. Like, how do you survive there? It's just like, well, Portland is crazy. But it's just, and then honestly, the place where I can bond with every single person across the political spectrum anywhere in the country, it's just like, I can be like, even if we're having a fight, I can be like, look, you and I have a lot more in common. The media is what really drives us apart. And they're like, absolutely. Everyone gets that they're being manipulated by the media. And, I am too. So that's empathic listening.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I love it. So so every situation is different. I mean, I will say like, so what I tell people, so there's a big push for land. Everyone wants to get land now. And people are like, Elon, go get us some land. I'm like, I can't just like go get you land. Like there's gotta be something to it. And they're like, well, why? And like, cause when you talk to a landowner, you actually have to be genuine and like have to understand if it's good for them or not. And understand why it's good for them. Now to be clear, like I think I come to it with most wind farms are going to make the farmer's life better. But that doesn't mean I'm always right. And I have to sort of be critical as I'm talking to the landowner and be like, well, what are you doing on your land? So The first wind farm we did, which I'm very proud of, is in Mississippi. And it's the first wind farm done in Mississippi. And it's the first one done on rice fields. Now, typically when you lay out a wind farm, you run the wind model through this big fancy computer and it says, put the turbines here, 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 and here. And that's the optimal wind resource so they don't wake each other out. And a lot of times I'll go in the middle of a field. Now, for a corn or wheat, it's a headache, but it's manageable. For a rice farmer, it's not manageable. They flood their entire field, right? And there's a lot of them now laser grade their field, so they've got like a very, very, very steady ramp down, so it drains to a specific spot. They spend all their money and time getting these berms right, keep the water in place. You put a road through the middle of it, you mess up all the drainage. I can't give you a crop payment because it's not just the land I'm destroying; it's everything else around it. And so this was what I learned from one of my favorite landowners in Mississippi, and it was just him teaching me that. Just being like, all right, well, why doesn't this work for you? And he'd be like, this is how we do it. Go out to the rice field, show me the damn berms. And I'm like, oh God, this isn't going to work. And I was just like, hey, this is either going to work for you or we're not going to do it. And we came out with a way to work for each other. So I treat every conversation as a new conversation. A friend of mine who works in the dairy industry here, I was doing some dairy digester work. And she said, the thing about dairies is this: if you've been to one dairy, you've been to one dairy. They're all different. Everyone's different. Land's different. Every piece of land is different. Some people, it's their life's work. They put it together through generations. They built it up. And, Rob, we were talking there's all that family history there. And you can call it, it's Macklin land because it was for generations. That's whose land it was. So in some places, they're foreign-owned places who don't really give a rip. It's just an investment property. You got to know what everyone's different.
Go ahead, Deb.
Well, I was thinking about the different philosophies of your team, of the cultures you come up against, and how you're setting that aside. You're setting aside your philosophies to really listen to the concerns of the people you're working with. And that seems to me pretty uncommon.
Yeah, it's very common in this world. I think a lot of it is, I don't think I set them aside at all, actually. It actually comes from an incredible place of confidence because I don't personally care if I'm wrong about climate change. I believe climate change is real. I believe humans caused it. I'm open to being wrong about it. I don't really care. I also don't think that I would ever be convinced of anything else because of the inputs I've had. But I'm convinced enough that I don't mind someone telling me no, it's not human cause. And we don't need any of this stuff. I don't mind hearing that. And because I understand why I believe it. And so I'm open to it. I'm not threatened by it. And I do now. That took me a long time. I did a lot of self-reflection of Donald Trump. I emotionally don't like Donald Trump. But I go back and just can I have this conversation with someone about a Trump? And the answer is, it's harder to do, but the answer is yes, because it's just I don't need to be emotionally invested in my outcome. I believe what I believe. If someone else believes what they want to believe, that's fine. I can identify with them and say, okay, well, it's this, and this, and this. And the only place I stop where it does stop is if someone gets to me and says if the conversation is going to affect us, well, I want you to believe that Trump is the best or the climate change isn't real, and I want you to believe these things. That's where I say, hey, I promise not to convince you that you're wrong, and I promise I'm not going to believe you if you think I'm wrong. I'm not going to do that. I'm happy to have the conversation, but if it comes to an argument of just you need to believe that Joe Biden's, completely checked out and doesn't do anything. I don't actually need to believe it. I'm happy to hear what you have to say about it, but we can talk about it. But if the conversation has to be that you're right, I'm wrong, we can stop the conversation now. It's not going to be a very interesting conversation.
And is that the one of the more common conversations you have with landowners is whether you're red or blue or in those politics? or climate change is
No,
real or not real?
no. The most farmers I meet with, everyone is very practical and is very much just like, what are you going to do to my land? That's what they're concerned about. They don't understand what this is, and they want to know what you're going to do to your land. After we get to know each other, that's when I start getting the elbows and the jabs and the like, taking more of my tax money, Elon, and like, how you're living in Portland, and do you have any Antifa coming with you next time? And but no, everyone is insanely practical. They're not. Sorry, not. Everyone's incredibly practical. These are businessmen. It's their farm. It's their livelihood, and they want to know what's happening. So the first conversation is about what do you want to do with my land?
Yeah, what I noticed, I'm just a little bit with you and other places, right? There's a deep practicality to it, with a smidge of sentimentality.
Yeah,
right? Like
good.
This is my land. This is our land. This is my family's land. This is my space land. You're not going to run my town by making all that, right? There's all that kind of conversation, but just a smidge of that. But they normally start with the practicality part.
I'll say the biggest mistake I ever made. I was with Luigi, and he didn't make a mistake, but I did. We had a landowner, and we wanted to get his land, and we had just come from his land, and it was up on the hill. We drove down, and I went to go meet him, and he was nice, and he goes, "Hey, do you want to go up and see my land?" And we're like, and he was older, and so I think a lot of our instinct is like, no, we don't want you to drag your 85-year-old butt out on this tractor and get up there. And he's like, no, I want to go show it to you. And we're like, no, it's okay. And the reason that was a mistake was he loved his land. He was very, very proud of it. And I think we eventually Luigi got to deal with him because Luigi's amazing. But I think we would have gotten him much faster if we had gone up there and sat with him and had him tell us like how great his land was and experience his land from his point. We'd been up there. We're like, yeah, it's beautiful. We get it. They got to tell you, like, you got to be up there with them. You got to be on the dirt with them. And like let them show you, like, look at this. Let's see how this breaks here. And, the cattle can come up here. There's the watering hole. We got this new fence we just put in. Like, you got to know what they care about.
Yeah. Thanks. What I hear from both of you is just that those stories, they are holding those stories about their land, and to be able to share that with you and share it with someone who will listen and care. Well, it means a lot to them.
The funniest thing about farmers, I'll say, I had this guy in Eastern Oregon who lived in a population of 100 people. And I was like, he could not have been, he didn't like people. Like, he was just like, he's not a very sociable guy. He was a cattleman. And I told him I was working on a project in Fields, Oregon, which has a population of 7. And I was just like, and he goes, oh, I have some property down there. I'm like, really? He goes, it's 5 hours from where he lived. And I'm like, why do you have land down there? Like, all this beautiful acreage up in Eastern Oregon. Get away from the fucking people. Like, you live in a town of 100 people. You don't see your neighbors. Like, you gotta be kidding me. But these guys will talk to you for 4 hours straight. And I'm like, it seems like you like people. Like, you say you don't, but like, you're kind of talking. Like, I don't mind it, but like, you should move to the city. You might have more conversations.
Yep. Well, next question for me is, like, what do you see as the culture of the renewables industry?
Wow, that's a good question. That changes. Changes quite a bit. The renewables industry goes up and down. It booms and busts with the policy. I think right now it's so bullish. Everyone is so excited. Everyone's coming in, except some of us salty veterans who are like, who are all these new people here, and what are they doing here? And because they don't seem to be doing it correctly, and we're wondering if they know something we don't. I will say I started in wind and had most of my experience in wind. There was great. There's been great camaraderie around wind developers. Like, it would not be wrong for when I was at Horizon Wind Energy to call up someone at Avangrid, a competitor, on a project that we may be certainly competing for a PPA on, which is our main offtake agreement. We might be competing with landowners somewhere else, and it would be perfectly okay for me to say, hey, I'm trying to talk to this county. Do you know any of these people? Have you Do you have any thoughts on this? Or is there a good biologist you know who knows anything about gray squirrels? Because like we can't find anybody. So there was a lot of camaraderie in the development era. It's also, the industry is pretty big, right? I mean, you've got the developers like me, and I'd say our crew is pretty collegial. Even today, like when we'll be competing with one another, but it's pretty polite. Then you got the finance transaction guys who are a little more removed from the farmers, and I'd say that's kind of Wall Street light. We worked with a number of Wall Street firms, and like some of them are just exactly what you'd imagine in Wall Street. Some of them are, some of these guys feel pretty good about that they're working on the good side of the fence for once, and they kind of like it. So they're a little bit lighter to deal with. But yeah, I think it's. I think the thing that I'm surprised at in the industry, coming from the advocacy world, I worked for an environmental advocacy group, and there were so many people who were so passionate and very bright about this work. And the industry is not like that. The industry is, I'd say there's way more MBAs in the business than there are people with environmental conservation degrees. I would have thought there'd be a lot of environmental conservationists. I would have thought there would be a lot more people who are passionate, who like are in it because of climate change, but like it's not. I mean, it is not that's not the driver. So I'd say my company's a little different from that. Like that's why I got into it. And there's certainly people like it, but the renewable energy culture is, I'd say generally people are happy. I'd say right now people are very young and new. And it goes up and down. Like we're in a bull period. It's going to crash at some point and it'll be bearish again. I'd say it's light is how I would say. LIGHT, like it's bright. But it's a pretty big industry to describe the culture in.
Okay.
Lots of different pieces of it.
Yeah, it's interesting how you triggered me was you may all be in it for the same outcome and you may produce the same outcome, but the passion is different. And I guess, does that matter then?
I mean, I think it matters in some senses. Like when I've seen people in the industry who aren't very talented, aren't very good, I get pretty upset because I know there's a kid out there who wants that job who will crush it. And when I see someone just like, I'm like, how did you get in here? Like, who hired you? And it's like, some of them have zero to offer, which is rare, but like, I think it should be at zero. And some people are like, it's a really good business decision. You can make a lot of money. I mean, like Luigi and I both worked at Onyx, which is a Blackstone company. And that was all just like, oh, the upside's great. I'm like first word out of their mouth. I'm like, yeah, I guess so. But that's good. I mean, again, I came into this world because I believe in capitalism and like they get things done. Like you actually do need money to get these things moving. So I'm very happy for people to get 9, 10, 15, 20% returns. I don't really care. So it's going to be part of it. And it's good that it's part of it.
Yeah, thank you.
We have 2 questions left, and this is the next to last one. If you had a magic wand to change something about the industry, right? Like the culture of the industry, right? Right. What would you do? What would you request? What would you do with your magic wand?
I think I would foster learning and development. I mean, I think there would be, I'd want a premium put on doing this stuff right. I think that there's a lot of move fast, get your project done and churn these things out. And I think I'd like to see more thought and learning going on and having good developers. When I first got hired at EDPR, I asked, it was one of the first meetings we had. And the CEO said, we don't want to be the biggest company. We want to be the best company. We want to have the best projects. Like we want our projects to be the nicest ones, whatever that means. That was much better than we're going to get 2 gigawatts in the ground next year. So let's go. Like it's fine. I mean, my goal is to do the energy transition. So I do want the 2 gigawatts, but I also like the projects that have, a little bit better mitigation on the environmental side. Spend a little bit more money here. people are a little bit happier. It's a little bit more interesting solution. I think that's good. Yeah.
Thank you. So, Deb, you want to do the last question?
Absolutely. We like to ask our guests. So you can pick favorite movie, favorite book, favorite media, favorite show you binge watch. Do you have one of those that you'd like to share with our audience?
I mean, I love The West Wing. I mean, I come from a political background, and the writing is so damn sharp. I'll watch it over and over again. I like living in that fantasy world where, yeah, no, it's absolutely West Wing. And you're like, the absolute West Wing fantasy, the world that we can't have, right? Is there's an episode where, and that's why I love it, because it's bringing people together. It's win-win. They want to put a Supreme Court justice. Somebody died or whatever, and they can't get the person they want because they're too liberal and the Senate's Republican. So they convince the liberal seating justice, who's 90 years old, who's like, he's the hallmark of the liberal justice. And they say, we want you to step down. And he's like, absolutely not. I wouldn't step down unless you could get this lawyer to replace me. And they said, we can do that. How are you going to do that? We're going to go out and we're going to appoint a conservative, a brilliant conservative, to replace the person who died. You're going to step down and you're going to get a brilliant liberal. So we're going to put 2 justices on the court, 1 brilliant conservative, 1 brilliant liberal. And that's how we're going to make all this work. Like, that's what I love. It's just like, that's where you should go. It's just like, it doesn't have to be, we don't have to fight in inches. Like, we should have great minds. I do have a legal education. So I have a great respect for the court and great legal minds. And like, I love great conservative minds. They're brilliant. It's fascinating to watch. So yeah, that's what I say.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Thanks.
Ron, how about you?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with a book I read not too long ago called Reinventing Organizations. And it really talks about what I call the 5th business revolution. They call it teal organizations. And it really talks about how we're moving away from, hierarchical based organizations to self-led teams. Mm-hmm. And I just see it happening. Like, I'm a part of it. I can watch it. I can love it. And what I love is it really gives everybody a chance inside their own organizations to contribute significantly.
What is it?
Reinventing Organizations.
Cool. And check it out.
Deb, how about you?
So Ron, you totally stole mine.
Okay.
And for our listeners, like, if you want to watch, you can see at the bottom there, it says Reinventing Organizations. And yeah, that book is so amazing to talk about. I don't know if you could say it's an evolution of the way business are moving. Certainly some businesses are not going to move that way. And I don't know, maybe their culture will make them move that way. But it's really eye-opening in terms of how successful these self-led teams can be and believing in others mm-hmm. and what they can contribute to the world.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yes,
just huge.
Yeah, that's my whole. So that's my whole game. So like on the campaign trail, so we did hand-to-hand voter contact, right? So we trained people, very easy script, and we would hire everybody, literally you couldn't have facial tattoos, but and we would train them, and like, a lot of people wouldn't make it, but like there would be these people who were down and out. There were these. I remember this one woman. Who, she's definitely a drug addict. And she was clean and she had a really hard life. And we gave her a job and she wasn't a great reader, but she got through the very simple script and she went home and memorized it. And it was just, are you registered to vote? It wasn't like a very complicated thing. And just watching her independence and self-worth rise with the ability to do something that was asked of her. Honestly, that's what I'm trying to recreate every day. Like just watching, giving people like, your potential is actually up here and I can show you where the ladder is. Like, I'm not doing it. It's like, it's all you. Like, you can do it. I love that. So
Oh,
I want
that's
to check this book
awesome.
out. I want to check this book out 100%.
One of the things I love the most is watching other people accomplish what they don't believe they can
Yes.
accomplish,
Yes.
because we did believe in them, and
Yeah.
they accomplished something that they you can't nobody take it away.
Yeah.
It opens a new space for them.
It's yeah, honestly, like that's my dream with this company. If first is climate change, but the second thing is like, so that's why I hire people who don't have experience. Cause like I got hired, I had no qualifications for this job. Like my friend called me who knew me, we worked on campaigns together. He was working at Horizon. He said, "Hey, you should apply for this job as project manager." And I'm like, I read it. It said 10 years experience. I said, "Chris, I don't have 10 years experience." He goes, "Well, I don't have 10 years experience and I'm hiring for the damn thing." So, and like no engineering, no meteorology, no analytics at the time, no finance. I was just like, I don't have anything here. Trusted me, learned it, and grateful.
Well, thanks, Elon. Thanks for being on our podcast today. Any last things to share with our group?
Yeah, I mean, if the editor doesn't mind too much, hey, one of the things on land, which is also like a favorite movie thing, is Seinfeld. When people want to go out and get land, and you talk about how you do it, I wanted to say this earlier, like, how do you do it? And like, there's a big push, like, just go out and sign land. Go with a checkbook, give the farmer whatever they want, just sign it up. It doesn't work. Whenever you put money in front of a farmer to solve their problem, they immediately smell BS and they walk away. And I relate it to a Seinfeld episode, the Muffin Top episode. I don't know if you ever saw that one, but Elaine's just like, "Oh, the muffin top's the best part." And her boss goes out and starts a restaurant that just sells the tops and no one likes them. And she's like, no, you have to make the whole muffin and pop off the top. And that's what I tell people about development and land. It's like, no. You can't just go out and be a land guy and go and be like, "Sign me up your land." You have to be a whole developer and you have to bring that whole bottom of the muffin with you and then talk to them about their land. But you got to know the interconnection. You got to know how this project's going to work. You got to know the design of it. You got to know the whole thing, because the farmer needs to know what's going on in their land. And if you can't answer that, they're not going to trust you, and they're going to. And maybe you get in a bargaining conversation, and you can sign up land like that. But the other secret is when you spend the time with them, when the farmer knows it, when the landowner knows it, they become your champion. They understand it as well as you do. They're excited about it. And now you've got something that you need, which is someone who cares about your project. So that was an answer to the previous question.
Thanks,
for
Elon.
Mike.
and thanks for being on our podcast today.
Absolutely. Thank you.